Long ago, God's people found themselves surrounded by darkness. Not just the darkness of night, but a deeper darkness. A world filled with uncertainty, fear, and longing. Their hearts ached for hope, for rescue, for a sign that they were not forgotten. They wandered through hardship and sorrow, feeling lost and hurting. In their pain, they cried out for deliverance, yearning for a Savior who would bring light to their troubled world. God, in His great love, heard their cries and made a promise that one day a Savior would come. God did not remain silent. He whispered hope through His prophets, speaking words of comfort and assurance. Through gentle voices and sacred scrolls, He revealed glimpses of His plan, assuring His people that He had not abandoned them. The prophets spoke of a coming king, one who would rule with justice and compassion, a leader unlike any the world had ever known. This king would bring peace, restore what was broken, and guide His people into a new dawn. Isaiah, one of the greatest prophets, saw a vision of a suffering servant. This servant would not come in power and glory, but in humility and pain. He would carry the sorrows of the people, bear their burdens, and bring healing through His own suffering. Micah, another prophet, spoke of a ruler who would be born in the small town of Bethlehem. Though humble and overlooked, this place would become the birthplace of hope for the entire world. Daniel, wise and faithful, prophesied the exact time when the Savior would appear. His words gave the people a sense of anticipation, a reason to watch and wait for the fulfillment of God's promise. These whispers of hope echoed through the ages, passed down from generation to generation. In every story told and every prayer whispered, the promise of a Savior lived on, lighting a spark in the hearts of God's people. Families gathered in their homes, clutching ancient scrolls, reading the words of the prophets by flickering candlelight. They held on to these promises, treasuring them as lifelines in a world that often felt cold and uncertain. Year after year, they waited. With every sunrise, they looked for signs. With every passing traveler, they wondered if the Savior had finally come. Their hope endured, even when the wait seemed endless. Through every trial and every season of doubt, God's promises remained. He is always faithful. His word never fails, and His plans are always fulfilled in the perfect time. Even when His people felt forgotten, God never turned away. He comforted them, reminded them of His love, and renewed their hope again and again. And then, in the fullness of time, God kept His greatest promise. He sent His Son, Jesus, born in a humble stable, just as the prophets had foretold. The Savior had finally arrived. Jesus, the light of the world, stepped into the darkness. With His coming, hope was reborn, and the world would never be the same. The world was weary under Roman rule. The iron grip of the empire stretched across the land, its banners casting long shadows over every home and heart. Daily life was marked by fear and uncertainty as soldiers marched through the streets and the voices of the oppressed were silenced. People were burdened by injustice. Heavy taxes and harsh laws weighed on their shoulders. Many struggled to feed their families, and hope seemed to fade with each passing day. They yearned for freedom from their suffering, for a world where peace and justice would reign. In the midst of despair, a quiet longing grew. They needed a king who would care, someone who would see their pain and bring comfort to their weary souls. The Jewish people clung to God's promises, passed down through generations. They gathered in the cool of the evening, whispering ancient prophecies and praying for deliverance. They knew a Messiah was coming, a Savior foretold by prophets, a hope that flickered in their hearts, even in the darkest times. Many imagined he would be a mighty warrior, a leader who would rise up with strength and power to defeat their enemies. They pictured a hero who would restore their nation and bring glory back to their people. He would free them from oppression, breaking the chains that bound them and lifting the weight of fear from their lives. He would establish his kingdom, a kingdom of justice, peace, and hope. The people dreamed of a new dawn, when suffering would end and joy would return to their land. Little did they know, their Savior was already on his way. Quietly, in the most unexpected of places, the answer to their prayers was drawing near. He wouldn't come as a mighty warrior, but as a humble baby, born in a stable, wrapped in simple cloth, and laid in a manger. He would conquer not with force, but with love. Through compassion, kindness, and sacrifice, he would change the world forever, fulfilling the deepest longings of every heart. Long before the birth of Jesus, the ancient prophets of Israel wrote words that would echo through the centuries. Isaiah, one of the most revered prophets, painted a poignant picture of a coming Savior. He described a figure who would not be celebrated for his outward appearance or earthly power, but instead would be marked by deep sorrow and suffering. This Messiah, Isaiah said, would be a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief, and familiar with the pain and struggles of humanity. The Messiah would be a man of sorrows, someone who would understand the depths of human pain and loss. He would not turn away from suffering, but would enter into it, sharing in the burdens of those around him. He would carry our grief and pain, taking upon himself the weight of our brokenness. Through his compassion and empathy, he would bring comfort to those who mourn and hope to those who feel loss. Isaiah foretold that this Savior would be wounded for our transgressions, suffering not for his own wrongdoing, but for the sake of others. His pain would be a sacrifice, a way to bring healing and forgiveness to all who believe. By his stripes, by the wounds he endured, we would be healed. The prophet's words offered hope that through the suffering of one, many could find restoration and peace. Centuries later, another prophet, Micah, pointed to a small, seemingly insignificant town, Bethlehem. He declared that from this humble place a ruler would arise, one whose origins were from ancient times. Out of this humble town, a ruler would come, not with armies or riches, but with humility and a heart for his people. This leader would be unlike any other, born in obscurity yet destined for greatness. He would shepherd his people with wisdom and strength, guiding them gently like a shepherd cares for his flock. His leadership would be marked by justice, mercy, and unwavering love. The prophet Daniel, living in exile far from his homeland, received visions that foretold the precise time when the Messiah would appear. Daniel's prophecy spoke of a coming anointed one, whose arrival would change the course of history. According to Daniel, the Messiah would come before the destruction of the great temple in Jerusalem. This detail would become a crucial sign for those searching for the promised Savior. When he arrived, he would usher in a new era of God's kingdom, a time of hope, renewal, and the promise of peace for all people. Though separated by centuries, Isaiah, Micah, and Daniel all spoke of the same Savior, Jesus. Their words, written on ancient scrolls, pointed forward to the one who would fulfill every promise. Jesus would fulfill each detail, living out the prophecies with astonishing accuracy. Every act, every moment of his life echoed the words spoken long before his birth. In him, the hopes of generations found their answer. He would be the hope of the world, the fulfillment of every prophecy, and the light that would never be extinguished. In a quiet stable, under a starlit sky, Jesus was born. He was no ordinary baby. He was God's son, come to earth as a man. Angels announced his arrival. Shepherds came to worship him. Mary, his mother, treasured these moments. She knew her son was special. He was a savior, the one the prophets had spoken about. Jesus, the King of Kings, chose a humble beginning. He came to serve, not to be served. He came to bring hope to the lost and love to the brokenhearted. Jesus grew up in Nazareth. He learned from his earthly father Joseph. He played with his friends. He listened to the stories of his people. Even as a child, Jesus possessed extraordinary wisdom. When he was 12, he amazed the teachers in the temple. He listened to them. He asked them questions. They were astonished at his understanding. Jesus was God's son, yet he lived a normal life. He showed us that God is with us in the ordinary moments. He is present in our everyday lives,